Okay, the next part of the question, number 4, says give the domain and range of the function and describe its meaning in the context of the situation. So if we're launching an object and it comes out as a quadratic or as a parabola, then to find the domain and the range, we would look at our x and our y axes. So our x-axis is time and our y-axis is height. Okay, so the domain, that's our x-axis, our range is our y-axis. Okay, so if we're thinking about domain and we're shooting an object or launching an object, okay, then the domain is going to be this direction. We're not going to have a negative direction because we can't go back in time. Because remember, this is time and this is height. Okay? So since we can't go back in time, we're not going to have negative. So we're going to start at 0. And then we're going to go until it hits the ground. Well, where does it hit the ground? Well, where do we find that it hit the ground? 8.37 approximately. Okay, so it started at 0 and then it went 8.37 seconds before it hit the ground. For our range, we're looking at how high it went. Okay, so this is where the vertex comes into play. How high did that object that we launched go? Okay, so it started at the ground, which was at 0. Okay, so we started at 0, and then how high did it go? This is where we want to look at our vertex. Okay, so the height that we found for our vertex, if you remember, our vertex was 4 and 306. Okay, so 306 is how high it went, so it's 0 and 306. Okay, so in this instant, it says give the domain and range, which we did, and describe its meaning in the context of the situation. So our domain in this context would be the time it took for that item to be launched and then hit the ground. Okay, so the time interval for whatever situation, because it could be another situation, but the time interval for this situation would be the time it took for the item to be launched before it hit the ground. The range, okay, so the range for this situation would be the height. Okay, so the height that it reached. To the maximum height that it reached. Okay, this next problem says the expression negative x squared plus 39x minus 270 models a company's profit for selling x items. For which number or numbers of items sold is the company's profit equal to 0? Okay. So with this problem, it tells you that this function models a company's profit. Okay, so really we could actually say P equals, because the profit is equal to negative x squared plus 39x minus 270. And then it says for which numbers of items sold is the company's profit equal to 0. So it tells you if the profit is equal to 0, then we can actually just say 0 equals negative x squared plus 39x minus 270. Okay? And so we've got to solve this to see when their profit is 0. So we've got to find x. Okay, so x is our items. So how many items will it take before they hit 0. Okay, so how are we going to solve for this? Well, there's a couple of different ways. You could factor it. You could quadratic formula. So really you're just trying to solve, okay? So to get solutions. So to get these solutions, let's do factoring first. Okay, let's do factoring first. So the only thing is this negative here. We don't like negatives on our x's. So we can factor out a negative. So we can say negative and factor it out. So really what that's doing is it's changing the sign on everything. Okay, so if we're factoring out a negative from a positive, then it becomes negative. Factoring out a negative from a negative, so it becomes positive. Okay, so when we factor, so we're trying to get our groups, we got to figure out what, because we're going to do rainbow, so what can we multiply? 1 times 270 is 270. What can we multiply to get 270? And then what can we add to get negative 39? And we can list all of our factors. Getting closer. Okay, well it looks like 9 and 30 will give us 39. But it's negative, so that means both of them have to be negative to get a negative 39 there. And then we have negative times negative is our positive 270. Okay, so it looks like we can do that. Negative 9 and negative 30. All right, so our first is x squared. Our last is 270. Our two middles, negative 9x, negative 30x. Then we say, well, what do they have in common? On the top, we can factor out an x. Then the bottom, we can factor out a 9. And since it's touching, it's negative. Okay. This column, we can factor out an x. We can factor out a 30, and it's negative. So we can say x minus 30, and then x minus 9, and then we can solve. Or you can say, well, it's also the opposite because it's inside the bubble. Okay, so really what we're going to do is x minus 30 equals 0, x minus 9 equals 0. So plus 30, x equals 30, and then plus 9, x equals 9. Okay, so what does that mean? Well, it's only asking you for which number of items sold. Well, there's 2, and that's okay. You can have 2 numbers of items sold that they can hit 0. Okay, so your answer for this one would be both of them. We would say x equals 30 and x equals 9. Okay, of items sold. Now, if we wanted to solve this instead of factoring, we wanted to use the quadratic formula, we could totally do that too. So let's do that, just so that you could see that it'll work both ways, okay? Okay, so 0 equals negative x squared plus 39x minus 270. And we have our a, we can put a 1, so it's negative 1 for our a, 39 for our b, negative 270 for our c. So to find our solutions, we have to put it in the quadratic formula. So negative b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2 times a. So b, 39, 39, a, negative 1, c, negative 270, and then a, negative 1. So we have negative 39 plus or minus square root. So we have 39 squared is 1521. And we have negative 4 times negative 1 times negative 270. It's going to be a negative 1080 all over negative 2. So then we have x equals negative 39. Actually, let's go ahead and do the 1521 minus 1080. So negative 39 plus or minus the square root of 441 all over negative 2, which is negative 39 plus or minus square root of 441 is 21 over negative 2. And then we do our positive solution and our negative solution because we have a positive and negative that we have to do. Okay, so our positive, negative 39 plus 21 is negative 18 over negative 2, which would be a positive 9. We have negative 39 minus 21, which is negative 60 over negative 2, which is a positive 30. So we still get 9 and 30 either way we go. Okay,